Welcome, everyone. Really glad you're here. I'm Zach Moscow, VP of Strategic Growth here at NetGain Technologies. We're a managed IT and cybersecurity provider serving small and mid-sized businesses across the Southeast. And over the last couple of years, AI has become one of the most consistent topics in every conversation we have with clients, prospects, and peers. So, over the next 3 months, we're narrowing our webinar scope into a series designed specifically for business leaders who are past the point of wondering whether AI matters and are now trying to figure out what to actually do about it. No hype, no jargon, just honest conversations about where AI creates real value for small to mid-sized businesses and what it takes to get there without wasting time and money. Today, we're focused on the foundation, understanding what AI actually is, why so many companies stall out before they see results, and what intentional AI adoption really looks like. I've got two phenomenal guests with me today. First, Hank Dallum, our CEO at NetGain. Hank made the call to invest significantly in AI, not just as a product we offer, but as a way we operate internally. And he's going to share what drove that decision and what he's learned watching businesses navigate this opportunity. And Noah Pfister, our Director of Continuous Improvement, and honestly, the person here who lives closest to AI on a daily basis. Noah has been building, testing, and refining how we use AI across our own organization, and he brings the level of practical depth to this that I think you're going to find really useful. Hank and Noah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I want to start with Hank and really understand the thought process behind this organizational prioritization of AI. We've made a significant investment, not just in tools, but in people and in processes. Was there a moment or a conversation that made you realize that this had to be a strategic priority?
Yeah, really the moment for me was realizing that AI was not just another software or another tool. It was becoming a new way of business and how businesses operate. So from a leadership standpoint, the question stopped being, should I pay attention to this? And it shifted to, how do we make sure that we're using this in a way that actually improves speed, improves decision making, and increases capacity without creating additional risk? We made the investment because we believe AI is going to reshape how companies get work done, not in somewhat abstract future sense. By the time we're finished with this conversation, something has already changed and moved forward in this space. And so it's happening right now. It happened yesterday. And so we're trying to help clients navigate that well, get ahead of it. And we're really trying to build real experience internally with the right processes, which is the most important piece, having the right underlying processes to build upon, to understand where it creates value for us and where it creates value for clients. Because what AI is really good at is scaling processes. But if you have underlying processes that are broken and not structured well, AI is just going to scale those unstructured processes at an exponential level. So we're trying to get ahead of that for our clients.
Yeah, I think that we'll touch on some of that a little bit later. And I threw some kind of high level stats up on the screen. I think one that really jumps out at me is we've got 96% of small businesses are planning to adopt AI in some form, which is a great theoretical number. But interest doesn't mean success. And that's really the point of this series and where we're trying to lead our own organization and our clients. From your perspective, Hank, as a CEO, you see all these stats. Can you identify an area that businesses are consistently getting wrong? Are they overthinking it? Are they underestimating it, or something totally different?
Probably think that most businesses are doing both of those things at once. They're overestimating how quickly AI can fix broken processes, and they're underestimating how much leadership discipline it takes to use it well. So a lot of companies are asking, what tool should we buy, before they've answered the important question, which is, what business problem are we solving? So AI works best when it's applied to a clear use case instead of a defined workflow or inside a defined workflow. Um, it's not a shortcut around operational clarity or a shortcut around a broken process. So if the process is messy, the data is unreliable, and the ownership of that process isn't clear, AI just, like I said before, it just makes the confusion happen faster. So the biggest mistake I see is treating AI like a production decision instead of a business capability uh, decision.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and we're going to get into more of those prioritizations and workflows as we continue in on the series. To take a step back, Noah, you're you're our guy on the inside, right? You're in the weeds on this daily. It's what you're working on. Um, has there anything changed in the last year, 6 months that makes the moment that we're in right now different than the cycles that we've seen before?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been very close to 2019. We were having conversations around this instance of platforms like ChatGPT and everything, but the work that Joe is so 6 months. Previous cycles were AI had to do one specific thing. What changed is that large language models is reason think watch that process. And nowadays is less party trick that show someone. Hey, maybe summarize this. Now it's an actual someone. Or it's something that can generate that goes into subsequent you know, basically so that's, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more later. That's kind of what we call the shift. And it's why we're not having the same conversation today that we did.
Yeah, and we will get into those different use cases and agentic AI. I think from a 30,000-foot view, where do you see in the organizations, the leaders that you've talked to, Noah, in this role, where do they get stuck before they even try anything? Is it confusion about tools or hesitation? Is it a knowledge problem or a skill gap? Where is that initial barrier before someone's really ready to say, we need to prioritize this and we need to get moving?
I think we see a lot of what very similar to file technology. People look at things like similar. They view it as just an answer to something, but they really haven't defined what it is that they are even trying to answer with something. So, maybe you've got a co-pilot license, but you have no adoption because no one organization hey, what work are we supposed to do? So there is definitely a knowledge that exists for to use the AI tools, but it's almost always kind of downstream.
Well, that is the perfect segue into the next section. I want to stay with you, Noah, and you kind of touched on this already. There's a temptation to pick a tool, whether that's Copilot, which is just what you mentioned, ChatGPT, and call that an AI strategy. Okay, we've bought this tool, we've provisioned it for our users. Now go and increase your productivity and have fun and be a superhuman. Um, NetGain's philosophy is that that's backwards. Can you walk us through why that's not how we're approaching the use of AI internally and why it's not the methodology that we recommend for our clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So something like AI has to be what you want. It has to be clearly defined before you just purchase a platform tool. And so you have to find use cases to justify the tool it is that you're looking at. When you are thinking of implementing a new platform, you have to think about how this be. So if the incorrect tool is what you move with first, it's going to be a very fast failure, but it's going to feel like a very slow one when you realize that users are using it because it isn't adjusted to flows of your business use cases.
Yeah, and I'll kick that to Hank because you said one of the magic CEO words or acronyms, and that's ROI. Hank, you're incredibly bright but maybe not the most technical person in our organization. No offense.
Don't
it, are there any questions that executives who maybe don't touch the operation, the IT operations or the governance on a day-to-day basis, questions that they should ask, before you approve the investment or enact the policy or lead from the top on AI adoption?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think about it. Thanks for calling me out on my
Sorry,
IT
Hank.
chops, but you're not wrong. So there's 6 key questions that I want to know as an executive trying to make this decision. What's the specific business problem that we're solving for? How do we measure success? Where does this fit into an actual workflow? What data or system access is needed in order to make this useful and keep it safe? Very importantly, who owns the outcome? And then the last part, which is also very important, is where does a human judgment still need to stay in the process? In a lot of businesses, speed is valuable, but trust, context, and judgment are even more valuable. So the right question is not just, can this be automated? It's, should it be? And to what degree?
Also, as a caveat, as a sales guy, I'm consistently humbled by the depth of technical expertise in this company. So that was a mutually applicable shot there. Noah, on that line, Hank is talking through these areas of benefit, of risk, of complexity, of governance, and I think that really plays into the methodology that we're using internally to identify these opportunities or use cases, and it's what we're taking to our clients. Without giving everything away of the process, just because we're limited on time and we won't get through it all, but what's the core idea behind this analytical approach and these variables that we've identified that help us refine that prioritization process?
Yeah, absolutely. The truth is, with something as fun as the concept is, the temptation is going to be very fun for users and to workflows and helping it to a specific use case. And that is going to be certainly something that you can do. But first, we need to realize that not every use case is created equal, right? And so we have to figure out a structured way to ensure that people actually are using the AI platforms initially to find real visible benefit. Because if you put it in front of them and they don't have a direction and they don't see that immediate kind of output that, hey, this is great, this is actually what's working for us, you're going to see that adoption rate drop off very quickly as they go back to their manual processes that they could hold on to and rely on before. So we're going to be doing things like taking a look at implementation complexity, security requirements, current infrastructure, process change, and certainly looking at what things are important to organizations specifically, whether that's growth, profitability, cultural improvement, those kinds of things.
Yeah, we talk a lot about crawl, walk, run also, right? And making sure that we're starting with something that really will have that tangible benefit is not maybe the biggest possible lift, to really inspire people, drive adoption, help all employees really see what what is behind these efforts. So I think that's really important. And I want to call out, I've got a stat here from Gartner that says that 40% of projects are going to be canceled, of current agentic AI processes in the SMB space will be canceled by next year due to scope creep and hidden costs, right? So really scoping this from the outset and defining those objectives early, I think is really critical. Um, One thing I want to just touch on before we move on, and Noah, this is another question for you. um, we've talked a lot about workflows in a general level, but I want to go a little bit deeper into integrations, and why in this tool selection process, a tool that can't connect to data sources or Microsoft 365 or any kind of core line of business application, um, why figuring out a solution or a workflow that's able to leverage those connections, those integrations is so critical in this scoping phase.
Yeah, sure. So going back to the first question that you asked me, Zach, I had mentioned that AI back then was, could have just been seen as a party trick. Hey, if you can summarize this document, you can maybe create a nice looking marketing photo or two. But the truth is that unless AI is able to see your specific data and the tools that you use, it's never going to be able to give a great answer that is anything beyond generic. So the value in AI in a business context really comes from it operating on your context, whether that's your CRM, your documentation platform, and your business specific processes. Without those types of integrations, you're getting, a happy assistant that will do what you want, but it's going to take a lot of guesses as it knows nothing about your business and what it does.
Yeah. Yep. Hank, we talked about ROI and how at an executive level you're measuring and ensuring these six um, components are satisfied as you're looking at objectives. I think as we move past the why and we move towards the how, it's your job to ensure alignment here at NetGain between our executive leadership team, our operations team, marketing, sales, you name it. You've seen that play out internally, and you've got a lot of peers in this industry. Are there phases or stages of that alignment cross-functionally where you've seen friction points or issues in syncing everybody together?
Sure. I mean, first, I'd say going down this path, um, failing while you're doing it is just tuition to play the game. So you got to get in there and fail when you need to. But I feel like it normally breaks down between groups, because each group is looking at it at a different lens. So leadership is focused on growth and vision and efficiency and competitive advantage. The IT is looking at they're the safe bumper guards looking at security and governance and how are we going to actually integrate this. And then the frontline employees are looking at it and they're saying, is this going to help me or did you just make my day more complicated? So if no one pulls all of these perspectives together into one practical plan, the initiative stalls. Leadership talks about vision, IT raises legitimate concerns, and employees start experimenting on their own. That's where shadow IT comes in, which is, from a safety standpoint for SMBs, is terrifying. And this is where momentum gets lost and risk really starts creeping in. So the organizations that do this well create alignment early around a few simple things. what processes are we improving? Who owns it? What are the guardrails? What does success look like? And what partnership can I create with someone that can keep track of all of these changes moving forward?
Yeah, and I want to come back to a couple of those high level executive things, but you brought up a concept that we talk a lot about internally and has come up a lot with prospects, and that is shadow AI. And Noah, I'll kick this to you just for a little bit of clarification for anybody here who is not familiar. What is shadow AI, and why, as Hank mentioned, is it a critical risk in the AI process for SMBs today?
Yeah, so shadow AI is the concept that your users are, there are a lot of free, whether free or paid AI platforms out there now that is absolutely exploded. Uh, People will often take the path of least resistance to make the workflow more efficient. And if you as an organization don't have a sanctioned AI platform tool or an AI policy, your users might go out and might use their personal ChatGPT instance or cloud subscription. And the real fear from that comes from the fact that that information that they are putting into it is completely invisible to you. That's why they call it shadow IT. From a compliance perspective, that is an absolute nightmare because whether you have the free model or even the paid version of these public models, the truth is that data, unless you go into settings, and most people don't know to do that, is the information that you put in there is going to be used to train the underlying model. So there is a chance that, let's say someone puts in some PII, some very HIPAA, you know, very scary stuff into a public model. It could be that that information somehow ends up in the hands of someone else later down the line once the AI is trained on the information put there.
Okay, back to you, Hank. So we've talked about shadow AI and IT. This is very worrisome. AI just learned that 40% of initiatives are going to fail. So it seems like a reasonable or rational response for an executive at a company would be to say, hey, let's pump the brakes. Let's wait how this plays out before we commit resources and energy and manpower into it. How would you respond to someone with that opinion?
I mean, that instinct is understandable. I get that, but waiting has a cost. So I look at opportunity costs in almost every decision that I make. So I would say start small. You don't need to, um, boil the whole ocean in a day. You don't need to make a massive investment on day one, but you need to start understanding what this is, how it can affect your business, and understand that time um, is not to your advantage. I would also say that we would not want a client to immediately just jump into deployment mode without policy, data governance, and clarity on what the problem is, which we've talked about several times, um, immediately. So, I mean, really figuring out what you're going to use it for, getting your house in order from a data perspective, from a policy perspective, is super important. And really, the smartest move is not to chase the hype. It's to run disciplined, low risk experiments that help your organization learn. So start with the really boring, non-sexy things like um, documentation, automatic documentation, like things that take a whole lot of time from, I call it dumb time. So a lot of dumb time from really smart people. So just documenting things is like a way to just try it out and get into it, and start learning what you can do. Because once, to Noah's point, I mean, once you really get into it, you can start to see use cases that you never thought you could see before.
Yeah, it comes back to crawl, walk, run, where we started earlier in this webinar as a really good top level approach for how we've rolled out AI internally and how we're encouraging our clients to do it too. In that complexity matrix that we also talked about earlier, we want the easy wins, right? Uh, Moderate to high impact and low complexity and risk, right? And I think documentation is a really good example of that. Document processing can be for a lot of organizations. Noah, any other kind of top level realistic first or second AI initiatives that you've seen or that you'd recommend? I'm not saying anything specific, but from a category, from a bird's eye perspective.
Sure. Yeah. And to your point, Zach, anything that is high friction, what I always tell people in automation is take the task that makes you it's define something with clear inputs. I know what I expect for this thing to look like. So things that Excel, what's your specific or how about the large industry specific. So, like I said, it's hard to pin down one here. Unlimited use cases. It's really which ones
Yeah, I think the other thing to add here is these methodologies and this process and this planning that we're talking about. Conceptually, I don't think this is rocket science. I mean, we're really just trying to gauge where are pain points, how complex is it going to be to solve those pain points with AI? I mean, you need guidance and you need the right people at the table to be able to have those conversations, but there's nothing revolutionary about assigning a methodology and a process to think through these issues. So going back to Hank, the right people in the room. You're obviously leading this effort. You're leading this organization. Who's important to have in the room with you as you were thinking through this from an early stage, and then to your colleagues out in the world, maybe a few months behind NetGain, but having these conversations. Who do they need at the table?
The real decision makers need to be in the room. Like I said before, this is it's a real leadership effort. So like AI is not a substitute for leadership or good operations. It's a multiplier. Like I said, it amplifies whatever kind of business you have already. Having senior leaders that understand the impact of this and are fully behind the process and that will work with us to help drive said process throughout the organization is crucial. So if you don't have that C-suite leader that's partnering with us to help, and that's what we come in and do. Like we can provide all that for you, but they really have to be committed to it. Otherwise, it's just going to be some other initiative that, like we all know in businesses, there are initiatives that just like they start strong and just kind of end. And then we think about it at the end of the year and like, what about that one thing we did? But if you really want to push forward with this, you need that C-suite leader in there that's the champion.
Yeah, and I think that also underscores what we're talking about in terms of early wins and making sure that we're starting with a small scope where we can see that return and see that positive impact it's going to create a culture and atmosphere where people believe, right? They've seen the result, even if it's a really small thing, but now the ball is rolling. Now
Yeah,
there's momentum
100%.
behind it. Now we've got an appetite to really continue to attack this and brainstorm and find new opportunities. Yeah, so Hank, back to you. One piece of advice who's to a business owner who's really ready to take AI seriously, not dabble, not show up to a webinar, but actually start building. What's that one piece of advice to start?
I mean, to kind of go back to what I said before, start small. Start with one meaningful business workflow. It's really annoying that you don't like doing. Um, it is repetitive. And so just start with one metric in order to figure out, get your baseline, like, judge it by one metric, have one owner for 30 days. Just try one thing with one person with one metric.
Great answer. Noah, as we sum things up, what for you, what separates the organizations that you've seen succeed with AI from the ones that stay stuck or that fizzle out? Is it a mindset? Is it a lack of alignment from leadership? Is it a cultural thing? I've talked with companies that are been in business for 50, 60 years, and they have really legacy processes and people that are resistant to change. So that feels personally relevant to me in my experience with clients and prospects that I've talked to. But you're the one in the weeds. So what's the make or break point, if there is one?
I think it's one piece of everything you said to say there's intention using it. Not just the science it's a true initiative. It's not what employee doesn't what I would say is, for teams that organizations that expect to fit perfectly into existing processes with flexible, store documentation, and use tools. I think that is going to be a challenge. So you see businesses not saying that the former tenant, the span is going to be
Yeah, I would say that the companies that win with AI won't be the ones that bought it first. It'll be the ones that learned it the fastest and applied it with the most discipline. To Noah's point.
Yeah. I wanted to go back. One thing that you said there. Oh, shoot, I lost it. We'll edit this out.
You got this.
No, I had a really good, insightful thing, and I lost it. I'm not going to find it. All right, back in. No, I've got maybe the trickiest question of the entire webinar for you. How do you experiment with AI safely and quickly without moving too slow or blowing things up?
I find something like I do think what we're going to say. Start with something that's low stakes, very visible. Anything you step before you move forward. So,
Good answer. And I wanted to come back to one point. Hank, really early in this webinar, you said you don't want to automate a broken process. And I think another great takeaway from this exercise of looking at use cases is there's a secondary impact of being able to evaluate older legacy processes and workflows and see, hey, maybe this isn't the right way to do this, or maybe this isn't the most efficient way to do that. Whether you decide to automate it with AI or not, this sort of methodical process of looking through annoying, repeatable tasks can bear fruit regardless of whether AI is used for them or not. And I think that that's another value add for going through this exercise.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to do everything with AI. You need to get a baseline for what you're judging the initial, I guess, toe in the hot tub foray into AI. But you don't need to do everything with AI. You need to do the right things in the right order for the right reasons.
I think that's a great final word. Hank and Noah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Before I let everybody go, a couple of quick things. If today was valuable, and I hope it was, we've got more coming over the next few months. Again, this is part of a series we're building for business leaders to go deeper on AI without having to sort through the noise on your own. We started pretty conceptual and high level today. Next month, we're going to focus more on the strategy and governance side of AI adoption. Very, very important. Now, those are big topics, but we're trying to keep these next webinars as practical as today. We're not going to get into the weeds of compliance and tech. We're going to stay very, very high level. The link to register for that is on the same landing page where you registered for this session. And if you've got a colleague, a peer, client who you think should be in these conversations, please forward it on. The second thing, and this one to be direct about, everything we talked about today, the planning process, who needs to be at the table, how to evaluate use cases, how to build alignment on your leadership team, it's not something you can really do just in a webinar. It takes a real conversation with the right people in the room, and that's what our AI workshop is designed for. It's a structured session that we run with leadership teams, not a sales pitch, not a demo day. It's a working session where you actually walk out with a framework, a prioritized list of use cases, and a plan for where to get started in the crawl, walk, run methodology for your business. We're running these now for a limited number of companies, and spots fill up quickly. If today made you think we need to actually sit down and think through this as a team, this is the place to do it. It's totally free. The registration link is right here. And if you want to talk this through before signing up, please reach out to me directly. Happy to have that conversation. Hank, Noah, thanks again. Really appreciate your time. Everybody, thanks for joining, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you, sir.